Really amazing presentation. You know, it's presentations like this that make me believe that we're going to come through this incredibly difficult time in the very near future. And Liz and Francis and I have worked together through United Way to increase the acceptance of COVID-19 vaccinations in our community. And that's the importance of events like this, where we can help to share ways that people can get information and overcome their hesitancy. Because as a physician, I and most physicians, pretty much every physician, feels that this is the way that we can beat this terrible disease. As Francis mentioned, I'm an ear, nose, and throat physician, and I work in New York City with offices in Brooklyn as well. It's been a really difficult year here in New York and around the country, but it's been a tough year for each and every one of us, worrying about our families and our friends, as well as our own health. And as a physician, we carry those worries as well as our concerns for our patients' health and how to shepherd them through this incredibly difficult time. So many people have mourned the loss of friends and even loved ones, which has been devastating on so many different levels. But each and every one of us has suffered those multitude of small losses, from missed time with family and friends to delayed vacations and family celebrations, and for missing being in a room and seeing a person like Joy perform. There's so many losses that we have had to endure. I shall never forget the sadness in my younger son's eyes as he graduated from college in our living room with only my husband and I to celebrate this incredible milestone in his life. So in late December, I was offered as an ear, nose, and throat physician the ability to get the COVID-19 vaccine. And for me as a physician, I immediately jumped at that opportunity. And 2 weeks after my vaccination, I was sitting in the operating room chatting, as I tend to do, with my colleagues in between cases. And I mentioned how lucky I felt to be one of the first group of healthcare workers to be offered the vaccine. And one of the young nurses turned to me and she said, "I'm not getting that vaccine. I'm just too worried that they're experimenting on us." And I said, maybe she's just young. And then one of the more seasoned nurses turned and said, "I'm really afraid of getting this vaccine. I'm just not going to do it." I said, And then what really surprised me is one of my dear friends, who was an anesthesiologist with over 40 years experience, said to me, "I'm just too afraid to get the vaccine. I'm just not going to get it." So at lunchtime, I went into the lunchroom and I sort of surveyed all the doctors and nurses and the technicians to figure out how people felt. These are medical professionals, how they felt about getting the vaccine. And over 35% of them said they weren't going to be vaccinated. And I said, wow, gee, these are people who have worked on the front line of COVID-19 in places like Elmhurst, Queens, and the Bronx, where we have seen the worst that COVID-19 could throw at a city, and they didn't want to get vaccinated. So those of you who are hesitant, you're not alone. There's a lot of people, even in the medical community, who have hesitation about getting vaccination. But this is why we're doing this event today, to help people overcome that vaccination hesitancy. So I said to myself, here are medical professionals who don't want to get vaccinated. What can I, as a person of color, a person in the medical profession, do to help my community and the people I care about to overcome that hesitancy? So what I did is I turned to my friends at Castle & Conley, and Castle & Conley is an organization that polls through a peer-nominated process to identify the top 5 to 7% of physicians in the United States. And what we did is we reached out to those physicians and we asked them to support vaccine safety and efficacy. And over 1,200 of them took time out of their busy days to sign a statement saying, we as the top physicians in the country really want you, the people we care about, to be vaccinated. And then I took that statement.
Dr. Jones, I just wanted to pause you since you're our host right now. You're in charge of letting people in the chat. I'm sorry. So I think there's somebody in the waiting room. I'm sorry to have cut you off right there, but I just wanted to try to sneak them in so that they can hear your presentation.
Yeah, take me off being the host. Let them in.
Okay.
I'll
take her off and I'll let her.
When I want to go back to my slides, I'll let you know.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sure. So as I was saying, we took that that concern that we all had, and that having all these physicians on board, and we launched Vaccinate for Love. And Vaccinate for Love, as I said, is a nonprofit that is dedicated, physician-run, to increasing vaccine acceptance in the Black, the brown communities, but throughout the United States. So what I'd like to do is spend a little time and talking a little bit about the basics of vaccination. So maybe if you can make me the host now.
Yes, I made you the host again.
Okay, great. So what I'm going to do now is share my screen. Great. All righty. Can you see my slides?
Yes.
All right, wonderful, great. So I'm going to go a little bit over the basics of COVID-19 vaccinations. Then I thought we'd spend some time answering questions and having a dialogue. So there are 3 different vaccines that are out there: Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer, and Moderna. So the most common vaccines that we in New York will see are Pfizer and Moderna. So the Pfizer and Moderna are COVID-19 messenger RNA vaccines, and they contain material from the COVID-19 virus that gives our cells instructions to make a harmless protein that is unique to the COVID-19 virus. After our cells make copies of the protein, the genetic material from the vaccine is destroyed. And our bodies see this protein and say it really shouldn't be there. This is something foreign. And they build up immunity. That's B cells and T cell lymphocytes. And those B and T cell lymphocytes are going to remember in the future what a part of that virus looks like. And that's what is going to protect us. That's what causes our immunity. So let's talk a little bit. There's been a lot of concerns, and on these calls, I get a lot of the same questions. And one of the questions that we have is, how are these vaccines produced so quickly? So let's talk a little bit about these 3 vaccines and how they were produced and brought to market so quickly. So Johnson & Johnson's, 43,000 people enrolled in their clinical trials. And what we wanted in these clinical trials is the people who are most susceptible to severe disease are the elderly. So we wanted to look at the percentage of older people who are in these clinical trials. So 34% of people in the J&J clinical trial were over 60. At a global reach, 8 countries, 3 continents, and 44% of the participants were in the US. 15% were Hispanic, 13% were Black, and 6% were Asian. How does it work? 1 shot, approved for those 18 years of age and older, has a global efficacy rate of 66%. In the United States, its efficacy rate is 72%. Moderna, over 30,000 people enrolled in their clinical trial. 64% were over 45 years of age, and 39% were 45 to 64 years of age, and 25% were over 65 years of age. Again, these are important numbers for us to know that it's going to protect the people who are most vulnerable. 89 clinical sites in 32 US states. 20% Hispanic, 10% Black, 4% Asian, and 3% identified as other. Moderna, 2 shots, 28 days apart, approved for those 18 years of age and older, and had a US efficacy rate of 94.5%. Fantastic. Pfizer, 44,000 people were enrolled in their clinical trials. 45% were older. It's not elderly because I'm older. 56 to 85 years of age. 150 clinical sites, 39 US states were enrolled. 39% of their participants were Hispanic, 10% Black, and 6% Asian. Pfizer, 2 shots, 21 days apart, and now Pfizer has gotten approval for 12 years of age and older, and has a 95% US efficacy rate. And in the 12 to 18 year age group, it has a 100% efficacy rate. So these are incredible numbers to help us know that it can really protect us. So what does it mean when they say clinical trials? What does that really mean? Well, I think one of the things that we can learn from this pandemic is when we want to fix something and we throw a whole bunch of money at it, we can get a lot done very, very quickly. So a clinical trial, in the preclinical trial phase, there's research and development, and messenger RNA vaccines are not something new. Phase one, we look at, does the vaccine cause the body to have an immune response? And that's a small group of people, 20 to 80 participants. And if we see that there was an immune response from the vaccine, then we go to phase two. What was that body's immune response? And was that immune response protective against the virus that you're trying to protect against? 100 to 300 participants. Phase three, how does disease rates compare between vaccinated and non-vaccinated participants? So really, how well can the vaccine protect people from getting the disease? And now we're into big numbers, over 3,000 participants. Then all this data goes to the FDA and they can confirm safety and efficacy. And now what we're in phase four, which is the ongoing monitoring of the safety and efficacy of the vaccine. And that's many, many thousands of participants. So what are the typical side effects that you can see after you get the COVID-19 vaccine? Well, they're pretty mild. Usually it's pain at the injection site, headache, muscle aches, fever, and tiredness. And these sort of symptoms usually occur after the second vaccine. And if you've had COVID, it can occur after the first vaccine because your body says, wait a minute, I've seen this before, I'm going to react. Whereas those of us who have not had COVID-19, we get our immune response after the second vaccine. So what we found is that Pfizer has the lowest rate of side effects. Moderna has a little bit higher, but still, we're not talking bad. And I got Moderna, and what I found is 24 hours after my second vaccine, I got, and I'm almost 64, I got a low-grade fever, I felt tired, I went to sleep at 6 o'clock, I took some Tylenol, and I woke up in the morning, I was like, yes, I'm good. And I went to work. So, really the side effects, especially for someone like me who's older, not elderly, older, were pretty mild. There have been no significant safety concerns that have been identified with the messenger RNA vaccines. There has been no deaths that have been linked to the mRNA vaccines. And there's ongoing evaluation of the rare side effects of increased blood clotting with the J&J vaccine. Again, we're talking about less than 20 people who had those side effects, around, hundreds of thousands of people who got that vaccine. So again, very, very rare. So one of the other questions we have is, that now that we've moved into the next phase where 50% of our population has had at least one vaccination, how do we live? What's our life going to be like? So those of you who are not fully vaccinated, you need to wear your mask anytime you're indoors. The CDC has told us that the risk of transmission outdoors is really pretty low. So if you're outside, you don't need to wear a mask. But inside, for those of you who are vaccinated, who are not vaccinated, you do need to wear a mask. If you're fully vaccinated, that means 2 weeks after Pfizer and Moderna, second shot, or 1 week after 2 weeks after your first J&J. Masks are only required in healthcare settings, on public transportation, or is mandated by local, state, and federal guidelines. Now, here in New York, the vast majority of businesses still require us to wear masks. And I just got back from my first vacation in Florida. It's like the Wild West down there. Nobody's wearing masks anywhere. So it really depends where you are and where you live, but being respectful of those people around you is really, really important. So if you haven't gotten vaccinated, what kind of mask should you wear? Well, the CDC examined which masks protect a recipient from an unmasked infected individual. So let's say you're at a restaurant, you haven't been vaccinated, you take your mask off, and the guy sitting like next to you or just a couple of feet away, or that friend who also isn't vaccinated and doesn't know they're sick, are you going to get sick? Well, if you were to wear a cloth mask, you eliminate transmission by 51%. A medical procedure mask, which you see here at the top, by 56%. a tight-fitting medical mask like the N or K95 by 77%, and a combination of both, a medical grade mask and a cloth mask, block transmission by 83%. And that's why the CDC was pushing us to all double masks for that sort of time period where things were a little bit crazy. If both people were double masked, the transmission rate was reduced by 96.4%. So again, why that was that real push to have all of us double masked. So another question I get frequently is, when is testing appropriate after I've had the COVID-19 vaccination? Okay, we can still get sick. There's still colds and flus and viruses and stuff that isn't COVID-19. And you get a fever and you don't feel well, it doesn't mean, since you've been vaccinated, that you have COVID-19 there. If you got Pfizer, Moderna, there's a 95% chance that you don't have it. But you should follow state and CD guidelines for testing. If you have any symptoms that are suggestive of COVID-19, there's still a 5% chance, so go ahead and get that test. So the other question I get is, I had COVID-19, I'm immune, why do I need to get vaccinated? Well, the risks of severe disease and death from COVID-19 far outweighs any benefits of natural immunity. COVID-19 vaccination will help protect you by creating antibody that will decrease the risk of severe disease. And that's what we're really concerned about. So everybody talks about this thing, herd immunity. Why do we want to get to herd immunity? Well, what herd immunity really is, it's preventing the spread of COVID-19. So getting the virus that causes COVID-19 may offer some natural protection, which is known as immunity, but we really don't know how long that immunity is going to last. The immunity from vaccination has been studied. It's been shown to last a minimum of 6 months and likely to last years. So this slide to the right shows you if someone who's infected comes in contact with a bunch of people who've been vaccinated, the chance of passing that virus along is really small. Where if there's a whole bunch of people who haven't been vaccinated, like now, 50% of our population, the chance of that virus being spread is much higher. So the more people who get vaccinated, the less chance of spreading this virus to others. So there's a whole lot of talk right now about the variants, and that's the thing as physicians that we're really concerned about. What is a variant? A variant occurs when there's a mutation or change of the COVID-19 virus. And a mutation can only occur inside somebody. So the COVID-19 vaccine doesn't, COVID-19 virus doesn't mutate out there on the street or on the Amazon package. It mutates inside you, the person who's gotten COVID-19. So to stop the development of variants, we need to stop the spread of COVID-19. So what are the variants that are out there? So the United Kingdom variant, it's called B17. And this first became identified in the United Kingdom in December of 2020, and we found in the US about 3 weeks later. And it's the most common variant in the United States right now. It has surpassed the Wuhan strain. B351 is from South Africa, when it was first identified in South Africa in December, and of course, showed up in the US a month later. And the Brazilian strain, a P1, identified in travelers from Brazil in January, and again, showed up in the US 3 weeks later. So you see, even though we've closed our borders, it's going to show up. California, of course, they could develop their own variant, B427 and B429. And these were first detected in February of 2021. And now we're seeing a new variant, which has entered the UK from India, which seems to be even more virulent and hasn't as yet shown up in the United States, but you know it's only time. So why are we so concerned about these variants? So the UK variant is 30 to 40 times more infectious than the initial COVID-19 virus that was identified in Wuhan. So what that means is 30 to 40 times higher chance of you passing the COVID-19 variant to somebody else. Luckily, the variants have not been found to cause more severe disease, but they spread much quicker. The other thing that we're really concerned about, the South African and the Brazilian variants have been shown to be able to form a mutation that helps the virus to evade the antibodies, such as those produced from previous infections, not from the vaccination, but from previous infections. And it's likely that the India variant is going to be the same thing. So if you had COVID-19 last April, like not a month ago, but a year ago, you are really at risk to get one of these variants that are now the common strain in the United States. A recent study from Qatar showed people who were fully vaccinated with the Pfizer vaccine were 75% less likely to develop a case of COVID-19 caused by B.1.351, that's the UK one, than were unvaccinated people. And they had near total protection from severe disease caused by the strain. So again, these are the strains that we're worried about, and the India one is coming. So COVID-19 vaccines decrease the chance of variants forming and are safe and effective and can protect all of us. So please don't hesitate, vaccinate. Thank you. Okay, all right.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jones.
Okay, so I'm gonna stop sharing.
Okay.
And I'll send it back over to you.
All right. So at this time, I'm actually going to pin Dr. Jones, Reverend Aker, and Joy. And a lot of the questions actually you did touch on in the chat, but I'm sorry, in your presentation. But Brittany, can you make my other one the host so I can pin them? And I'm gonna start off with Pastor Aker. If you can ask your first question to Dr. Jones, and just we can keep going. Joy, you can go with your 2 questions, and then Pastor Aker will finish with your question. Just we can talk a little bit more in depth on those particular ones.
Thank you, Francis, and thank you, Dr. Jones, for that very thorough presentation. Yes, one of my questions centers around not necessarily herd immunity, but I heard a stat saying that almost 50% of the United States has already been vaccinated. Do you think that's a very accurate number? And also, some states have as much as 70%, but do you foresee by the end of 21, those vaccination numbers getting higher and just providing more safety and perhaps more of a return to what we know as some type of normalcy?
It's such a great question, Pastor Aker, and I think that's why you're here. That's why I'm here, because you really do want to encourage those people who are somewhat hesitant now to make that step and get vaccinated. How much would I love to be in the room and watch Joy dance? How much would I love to be all of us together to share this? I'm really sick of Zoom. I want to be in the room with everybody. And the only way we can do that is for all of us to make that step and get vaccinated. And again, the numbers are definitely trending down, but at my hospital, New York Presbyterian, we have over 250 people still in the hospital with COVID-19. So this is not over. And the thing that I want to stress is that, in looking at this, as physicians, it's really scary to us because we don't know which one of you is going to end up in the hospital. Before, when we dealt with illnesses, we could say, okay, you're going to get the flu, you're young, you're healthy, you're going to be fine. With COVID-19, I can't say that. I've been so lucky with my patients that none of them have ended up in the hospital, but I'm really, really on them. And I just keep on them with everything that I've learned over the past year to keep them healthy. But I guess, especially with our community who sometimes don't have access to care as quickly as they would like, those are the people who could end up really sick and in the hospital. And I've seen 20-year-olds and 30-year-olds end up in the hospital intubated. And, I just had a friend whose daughter was 25 and died from COVID-19. And that's devastating. That shouldn't have happened.
And the part B to my question, just looking to the future, as far as worship service, singing, standing up, clapping your hands, is that safe or recommended, even with 6 feet and observing certainly all of the protocols? Do you think that's safe to have a choir, prayer lines? Do you think that that's safe, or is it still just better to have people in and out in about 45, 50 minutes? How long can we safely gather?
Yeah, and I think it's a really great question, because all of us would love to go back to the things we love, like church and events together and wonderful dance performances and music. But right now, what we need to do is we need to have everybody on their best behavior. For those people who aren't vaccinated, please don't attend those events. For those of us who are vaccinated, yes, we can. And if you are unvaccinated and you really want to attend that event, double mask, and please don't sing and don't spread germs. And the way that we spread germs is respiratorily. So you can be there and double mask and not fully participate. So I hope for those of you who are thinking about how much you want to go and hear Pastor Akers speak and be in that community, you'll think about how great it would be to get vaccinated and be a part of our community.
Thank you.
Joy, go ahead and ask your questions. Thank you.
Okay. My first question is, I guess it's kind of a personal question, but I'm sure other younger women might have a similar question regarding fertility. I'm 32, and one of my main concerns is, while being someone who normally doesn't get vaccinated, I'm just curious about the effects on someone who would like to have children one day, and also like child development as far as getting the vaccine goes. Like, what are the effects?
Great question. Such a great question, because there's a lot of concern, especially among people of your age, about getting the vaccine and its effect on your future fertility. And this sort of misconception came about because there was a statement that was made probably about 8 to 9 months ago by some scientists who saw that there was a similarity between the placenta, one of the proteins on the placenta, and one of the proteins on COVID-19. It was one protein. And they thought that by getting the vaccine, that our body would create a antibody response to the placenta while it was creating antibody response to COVID-19. But that never panned out. We didn't see that. And there's been many, 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 many women who have been vaccinated, and we haven't found any change in either fertility or in reproductive safety or in people who are pregnant and have been vaccinated. And actually, what we have found in following COVID-19 now for more than a year is that COVID-19's effect on fertility can be significant. And the group that it does affect most significantly is men. So the way that COVID-19, the virus acts, is it enters in usually through your respiratory system and usually through your nose. And what it does, it binds to a receptor on the cell called the ACE2 receptor. Now, the ACE2 receptor is seen in the nerves that for smell and taste. It's seen in the lungs, and it's also seen in the cells that produce sperm. So we've seen that the 3 places that COVID-19 can affect is your sense of taste and smell. It can affect your lungs. We've also seen that it can affect the ability of men to produce healthy sperm. So studies have shown that young men who develop COVID-19 have a higher chance of being infertile. People who become pregnant and get COVID-19 also have a higher chance of miscarriage and stillbirth and having their children born sick. And that's something that, as a doctor who deals with young children, we've been battling. So you have a much higher chance of danger from getting COVID-19 than you do from getting the vaccine. And actually, the vaccine can protect your fertility.
So the loss of smell, I actually know someone who has loss of smell still after about a month of not having COVID. So that has more to do with having COVID than the vaccination, right?
It's having to do with COVID. So as I said, that virus attacks the cells around the nerve, and doesn't attack the nerve itself, attacks the cells that support the nerve. And what we found with, and I've been doing some research on this, and we found that a whole sort of supplements, as well as sometimes nasal steroids to decrease that inflammation. But in my patient population, if you don't get better quickly, it usually takes about a year to get back your sense of taste and smell. And that can be devastating to people 20 to 30 years old. To not be able to taste, to not be able to smell someone that you love is just devastating.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Another statistic that's really interesting when we think about, the risks of sort of that not getting vaccinated, it's shown that 75% of people who are hospitalized for COVID-19 had long-term symptoms from COVID, at least one long-term symptom 6 months after they were discharged from the hospital. So that's a huge number of people who have these long haul symptoms. And that's one of the things that we're really concerned about, is that we just don't know that 20 and 30-year-olds are going to go on to have long-term symptoms from COVID-19. And here came up on the screen, free COVID-19 testings and vaccinations. So June 3rd, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., Brownsville Recreation Center. And I imagine that that's probably either Pfizer or Moderna.
Yeah, I actually don't know the details of which test is going to be, but I know that this is part of our CHL partnership. So our job is really to do the testing, and then different programs partner with us and do vaccinations. So we've been partnering with so many different people. We've had every different vaccination, but I just wanted to take a second to plug our event, which is next Thursday for Brooklyn Queens Day. And just, something that we've been just processing is like getting tested regularly, like the way we go get our nails done or our hair done, like go get tested so that as you go out. But one of the questions that I wanted to ask, and then I wanted to actually open it up to the chat for you all to ask typed questions in, and we can open it up to you all. But when I go to people and talk to them about the vaccination, one of the biggest criticisms that they've been saying is like, why are they pushing it so much? There's a lot of diseases out there people are dying from, and all of a sudden they're just pushing this. And so can you kind of speak to that a little bit? Because sometimes it's hard to try to convey the knowledge from all of this.
It's again, such a great question, because we have to think about the magnitude of COVID-19. So if we look at the flu in the United States, which is probably one of the diseases that we can equate with COVID-19, it's a respiratory illness. You get it via, sneezing, coughing, and things like that. So 34,000 people each year die from the flu. When we look at COVID-19, 500,000 people died from COVID-19 in the United States in the past year. So that's a huge magnitude of people who died from COVID-19 as compared to people who died from the flu. And again, as I was talking about, 75% of people who are hospitalized from COVID-19 go on to have long-term symptoms, long-term fatigue, muscle aches, depression, anxiety, problems with their heart, problems with their lung. And I'm not saying it's just older people. It can be, you could be 20, you could be 30, you could have a loss of sense and taste and smell for a year. I, as a physician, having practiced for over 32 years, I've never seen anything like this. In the past, I could say, okay, you didn't want to get your flu vaccine, it's fine. I'm going to push it in people who are immune compromised, who are elderly, who, work in healthcare settings. We all had to get flu vaccines. But the thing about this is that, you can be 20 years old and you can end up in the hospital intubated and sick for years and years and years. That's where we're just so afraid of this one.
Thank you. Thank you for speaking to that. Like I said, I'm in a lot of these different discussions. And so I hear it, but you know, getting it out to the people is what I want to do and use this information in this recording. So yeah, at this time, Brittany, were there any questions in the chat?
I'm checking now, but if there aren't any questions, our guests are more than welcome to put it in the chat and I can read them aloud.
So
And I guess oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, while people are putting things in the chat, you know, one of the hesitations was, okay, I'm going to wait till a whole bunch of people get the vaccine and see what happens. Well, now over 800 million people have gotten the vaccine, and we have that data, and we can show you that this is a safe and effective vaccine. I don't know how many more people you need to decide that you're going to go ahead and get it. 800 million is a good number for us to feel really safe and telling you this is a safe one. And then these mRNA vaccines have been around for years. And everyone says, like, why did they come? How come this one came through in 10 months? Because they threw so much money at it that this thing got developed so quickly. And we're lucky that our government, that we are a wealthy nation. It's the one time we can say, yeah, we are a wealthy nation, and we were able to develop this vaccine really quickly. So tell me what was in the chat. Can someone read me those questions?
Yes. Hold on. What are your thoughts on the recent heart inflammatory in teenagers?
Inflammatory.
Excuse me,
Yeah,
inflammatory in teenagers, sorry.
Oh, so that's multi-system inflammatory disease, and it occurred in children, and the numbers were pretty low. I just completed a study last year, and we looked at the rate of COVID-19 in children from May until September. And now we're again opening up our study to look at September and until now. And what we found is the rate of asymptomatic COVID-19 to be about 0.4% in children. So we didn't find that children had a high rate of getting COVID, of carrying COVID-19 asymptomatically, which is why we really pushed in New York City to get the schools open as quickly as we could, because we didn't find that the kids were the ones who were spreading it. It was more the adults. And now that all teachers have the opportunity to get vaccinated, everybody has the opportunity to get vaccinated, we really feel very strong that the kids need to get back to school. So that rate of multi-system inflammatory disease was really small in children. And the rate of children dying from COVID-19 was really less than 1% of children died from COVID-19. So yeah, and one of the reasons why they didn't get so sick is COVID-19 is one of the viruses that causes the common cold. And children get between 6 and 8 colds per year. So their body has seen a whole bunch of colds. And when the COVID-19 comes in, their immune system says, oh yeah, I've seen this before, you're out of here. For us older people, we just don't have that healthy, strong immune system that's able to react as quickly to COVID-19, which is why children were more at advantage through this pandemic than we were. Thank goodness.
The next question is the vaccine safe for people who have autoimmune disease?
Yes, it's really important for people who have autoimmune disease to get vaccinated. And the reason is you're more at risk to get the complications from COVID-19. Now, what COVID-19 does is it comes into your body, it binds to those ACE2 receptors, and then it sets off an inflammatory response. Now, for those people who have autoimmune problems, you already know that your immune system overreacts to a lot of things. So if you have lupus, if you have scleroderma, if you have rheumatoid arthritis, your body is already reacting to the natural things that other people's body doesn't. So you add COVID-19, your immune system is going to go crazy. And you're the type of person who has a much higher chance of having those long haul complications from COVID-19. So you really do need to get vaccinated. And we haven't found that the COVID-19 vaccine causes that sort of immune response. Now, you may have a little bit higher immune response than everybody else, but again, it's going to be 24 hours compared to years of the immune response you're going to get with COVID-19 virus.
Next question. Have there been any more cases with the Johnson & Johnson vaccine?
Not that we've seen, and the CDC is monitoring that really, really closely to see if there has been any more reports. So we really still are under 20 people who developed complications, and so far there's only been 6 deaths from J&J, and that was in women from 18 to 45 years of age. So if you think about the complications from the birth control pill and people having blood clots from the birth control pill, it's much higher than it was from the COVID-19 vaccine. And there's a whole bunch of people who take birth control pills every day and don't think about it. But I think because there was so much scrutiny on the COVID-19 vaccine, there was a lot more press that was given to the complications from the vaccine than was from the complications from birth control pills. So there's a lot of things that can cause risk. But again, these complications were so, so rare. And if you fall in that age group and you really don't want to get any chance of a complication, get Pfizer and Moderna. Walk into Walgreens, or go to one of the vaccinations events. That's where you'll find Pfizer and Moderna.
Okay. Next question comes from Liz Ortiz. Great presentation. I've seen this presentation several times and learned so much every time. When do you think the vaccination will be fully approved? Not just EUA.
Oh, I don't think probably not till later on in the year. To get full approval, you have to go through an incredible regulatory process. And right now, what the FDA is concentrating on is going through, looking at all the studies. So we now have 12 to 18 for Pfizer. Then we're going to go 12 to 18 for Moderna. Then we're going to go 2 to 12 to Pfizer. Then we're going to go 2 to 12 to Moderna. Then we're going to look at Johnson & Johnson. And then we're going to decide, we're going to look at Johnson & Johnson to see if we have to have any more restrictions. So I think that right now, the FDA is really concentrated in making sure that we have vaccines available to our entire population. And then once we get sort of to herd immunity, then they're going to say, okay, we got enough time to go ahead and look at all this data and make these something that is ongoing. One of the questions that was asked is, what's going to be the new norm? So I think what's going to be the new norm, if we can convince everybody to get vaccinated, then I think hopefully by September, we'll be out of mass. Yes. And we'll be all together watching Joy dance, being at Pastor Akers Church, being at community events together. And I hope that by I would say by Christmas time, there'll be a booster shot that will be available for all the variants that are out there. And it's probably going to be that we're going to be getting booster shots once a year to make sure that we are 95% safe against the variants. But the more that we get vaccinated, less the chances are that variants occur, and less the chances are that we have to have booster shots every year. So the more people who get vaccinated, the less there is variants develop, the more that we have chance getting back to our lives.
Next question. Well, you answered that, Dr. Jones. When will the booster shots be available? Yes. Hopefully sometime in December. Yeah. Next question. Recently, the CDC said you don't have to wear masks outdoors in small group settings. What are your thoughts on this?
I feel comfortable with that. If we look at, I was one of those people who was wiping down my Amazon packages and spraying everything and wiping down the fruit when I brought it in from the grocery store. So yeah, I was just as crazy as everybody else. But the more that we look at the research, we find that COVID-19 is really not so healthy a virus, meaning that it doesn't survive in certain environments. So last April and May, when we were all wiping down our packages, that research came from lab-based studies. So what they did is they took COVID-19 virus and they spread it on all these different surfaces, and then they looked at how long it survived on these surfaces. But those tests were performed in a laboratory where the temperature was steady, where there was no sunlight, where there was no humidity. When we had the time to do those studies in the real world, By the summer, by the fall, we found that COVID-19 pretty much dies when it's exposed to sun, when it's exposed to different humidities. And that's when we stopped wiping down our packages and being also crazy. And then the more that we've gone along, we found that COVID-19 really it dissipates really quickly outside. So we should still, as we're going through, for those of you who are unvaccinated, you still need to maintain 6 feet. You still need to keep your mask on because you don't know who else you're going to become in contact with, but that's inside. If you're outside, if you're in a group that's vaccinated, if you can keep yourself 6 feet away from someone, you don't need to wear a mask. But again, if you get vaccinated, then you can pretty much sort of do what you want within reason.
Next question, why do we have to wear a mask in schools?
Okay, that's a good one, and I think that's something that we're gonna move towards. It's a little bit of a charged question. We haven't required teachers to be vaccinated. If it was my decision, I would, but we can't force people to get vaccinated. So we have a group of adults who we think they're vaccinated, but we can't ask them. So we need to make sure that everybody wears a mask because children haven't been vaccinated yet. 12 and up have, but little kids haven't. So until we can assure that, every teacher's been vaccinated and all the children have been vaccinated, then we need to keep them safe. So yeah, another reason, please get vaccinated.
And the next question, in addition to taking the vaccine, what advice would you give to your patients on the importance of building immunity in their systems? For example, healthy diet and nutrition like vitamin D3.
And this is going to actually be the last question because I do want to honor the time. And I'm so thankful for everyone. I just wanted to do one more quick plug, which I also put into the chat. It's our Instagram page. I know a lot of people are on Instagram, and I just wanted to let you all know about this because you'll be able to follow Vaccinate for Love and stay connected. Like, I really want to keep this dialogue going. And I want to, do this again. And so I see that we're getting to the last minute and I don't want to go too much. So this is going to be the last question, but I did want to plug this in, and please follow this page so that when we're doing other things, you all can stay connected. We didn't do like a RSVP for this, which we should have because there's a lot of people on, but I know most of them. And so I'm going to reach back out so that you all can come to the next one. Brittany, if you can read that last part of that question again, and then Dr. Jones, thank you again so much, Pastor Aker, and thank you everyone for being a part of this chat. Really appreciate it. This was the first time that we did this, and just thank you all. So go ahead again, Brittany, sorry.
In addition to taking the vaccine, what advice would you give your patients on the importance of building their immune system? For example, a healthy diet, nutrition like vitamins D3.
So one of the questions that we didn't address that Pastor Aker had posed is, what are some of the positive things of this pandemic? And there are a couple of things. And one of the biggest things that I think that comes of this pandemic is our concentration as individuals on our health. A lot of times we think about working, we think about, all sorts of things, that aren't as important as our health. Because if we have our health, everything else we can deal with. So concentrating on your health. And what we as physicians learned from this pandemic is there's lots of things we don't know a whole bunch about. Like, this was a new one. We really had to pull a whole bunch of things out of our hat to come through this. And one of the things that I learned as a physician is the importance of healthy lifestyle, of managing your stress, of maximizing your immune system. And if you'd like to visit our Vaccinate for Love website, what you can do is you can learn more about nutrition, but I tell everyone, vitamin C, 1,000 milligrams twice a day, vitamin D, 1,000 milligrams twice a day, omega-3, 2,000 milligrams twice a day. And those are the 3 big vitamins that if you take those every single day, cut down on your stress, go to events such as Francis is promoting, where you can get your blood pressure checked, where you can get health screening. Keep up. If there's anything that comes out of this pandemic, it's concentrating on your health and managing it. So I'm going to end by just saying how much I appreciate being a part of this event. It's been amazing. Francis, Liz, Joy, Pastor Aker, everyone who participated in it. I can't tell you how much I appreciate being a part of it. For anyone who has another organization that you'd like Vaccinate for Love to present to or be involved with, we'd so love to do that. That's what Vaccinate for Love is about. It's reaching out to people in these small groups to answer your questions, to get the information from physicians to you, and for all of us together to come through this healthy and back to a normal life.